What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode, the AMS Podcast, discussing things about film, past, present, and future. I'm your host, Adrian Michael Soto. Good to be back. Good to see you all. If you're listening to previous episodes, like I mentioned before in the past, thank you all so much for listening. Um, I made an announcement about a week ago at the time of this release, just on the future of the channel and the podcast itself. So head over to the channel, or I'll leave a link on the future of this channel. But in the meantime, let's talk about another movie topic. Like I said, throughout all the podcast episodes, I've gone through the decision of just coming up with anything that comes to mind. I've had some help from a very good friend, um, who's such a film fan as much as I am. And today's episode, I'm going to go through a list. And at first, I want to give my list or things that come off to mind. And then you all decide on what you all think would be your list. Movies have gone around for more than 100 years. As I've probably stated before, Warner Brothers and Disney are celebrating 100 years of their industry. Their studios, Universal Pictures has been around for 100 years. So many movies that I could list back from today, this very point, to back in the 1950s. But I wanted to come up with this topic, and I'm going to use my phone here and going to kind of just Google what makes a iconic movie character, and I'm going to read this to you all. A iconic character is essentially someone whose presence is so desirable that it independently elevates their story. Someone who you want to spend time with and go on any adventure with. That I have one in mind that I'll mention in just a second. They don't always have to be relatable or even heroic, just really interesting. And by extension, probably really cool. And in most cases, I could see that being a villain, because at first, I never really said iconic, good guy, or bad guy. It could be both. You may like an iconic movie character in Heath Ledger's Joker, Hannibal Lecter, Norman Bates from Psycho, Ghostface from the Scream franchise, or a hero in Indiana Jones. Hence the thing of an episode. I mean, of what I just said, episode. Um, it could be Han Solo. He he's a man who only trusts his co-pilot and doesn't really like to take orders. He goes by the way of just flying and search the galaxy of an adventure, but doesn't want to get caught. Doesn't like all the spiel of saving people and things like that. The list goes on and on. Um, Forrest Gump, Gollum from the Lord of the Rings franchise. That could be one that his backstory you want to see, you feel bad for, but it's interesting because his story arc goes from this creepy looking thing, but once you process, I won't spoil anything in movies, but once you process through how you see him, you view him in a different point. So just the possibilities are endless. So what I'm about to do here is I looked up a list here on Empire, and this list is back in 2020. Um, I'm not going to say you all have to agree with this list, or maybe you do have to agree with this list. Excuse the noise there for a second. This is going to just be Like I said, I could do almost a 3 hour show or 3 hour episode, a whole day episode, or we can go into specifics. So I'm going to just go off of my experience of films I have seen, or, and I've, you may have known, I haven't seen some other films in the past, but I know of the characters and their importance and significance. So bear with me for just a second. And here we go. Let's go back to the top here. Spoiler alert. So as you probably see, they're going to. I'm gonna go through all of them. I'll go through some of them specifically, but and you may not agree with. First one at 100, Edna Mode. Her personality and just who she is just really interesting per se. And it being one of those that she helps out the Parr family, the Incredibles, and she just has her style and everything, and it just makes sense in the way of it being. Uh, she's very funny in the movies. The two Incredibles movies are really good. So I could see, and let's kind of see the description they give here. Her defining moment is no capes, modes more eccentric personality hides distinctly practical approach to a superhero fashion. Um, I would say you could give this as an honorable mention, but there's so many others. I know of this film, and to all those of my film fans who know this one, flew over the cuckoo's nest. Jack Nicholson has many iconic characters, so we may see a bunch of other of his films. And just spoke to my very very good friend who, as I told you, helped me with suggestions on creating this episode, Randall McMurray, and this has become an iconic film character. The Transformers movies, they're okay, but I wouldn't consider. I would say more or less of Caesar from the remake Planet of the Apes movies are more iconic character, but the series itself, and maybe some of you all might disagree, and they're including this Age of Extinction, which I believe was the fifth or sixth one. I lost count after a while. And here we go, Norman Bates of the Psycho films, and I can't believe as I see this here, there was a remake. I saw this in a college course, and just understanding who Alfred Hitchcock was and how he wanted to bring an iconic character that you would eventually, and we'll probably see in this list here of other characters like this that get that suspense killer or thriller type films. And if you all haven't seen this, I'd say give it a chance. It's going to be silly obviously because it came out in the 60s, but it's something worth to note that, as I may have mentioned, you have to people that create movies, they honor what came before, or they have, what's the way of phrasing it, like references and ideals to them coming up with such a thing like this. So I could see Norman Bates as an iconic character. These these three guys, they're funny, and maybe it's a generational thing. I would say later on down the line, they could become iconic. I see them more, the Minions, the Despicable Me franchise. They've become popular. They've become a popular trend. Universal is using them in their theme parks, and kids of the younger generation adore these, and maybe adults too. I am not saying I don't like them. I just don't see them as iconic yet. But their popularity has skyrocketed as other things in the list here. This one I feel is too at the bottom of the list, and maybe, like I said, I'm not hating on this list, but a film like this for Russell Crowe is in one of his pinnacle moments of his career. And are you not all entertained? Just it's one of those that I have seen this film, and it is I would definitely say should be higher up on the list. Legolas, the Lord of the Rings franchise, and I would assume that we may see characters from the Lord of the Rings films. Those are also, I'm not going to rank amongst, but their story arc of the three films that came from three books, they each changed and progressed as characters. So I could definitely see Legolas becoming part of this list, and just the character of him being a friendship with a human, with a dwarf, and with hobbits. And pretty much it's one of those that I looked like he changed as a person. And not to go into a whole spiel, but for me, I'm a fan of the fantasy films. And I forget about the Hobbit trilogy. I wasn't so much of the Hobbit trilogy, even though that was just one book. But I could, I would agree, Legolas being on this list. Wednesday Adams, currently in just a few months ago. We've all been, everybody has become accustomed to the Wednesday TV series on Netflix. And it was portrayed by Christina Ricci herself, the films from the 90s. And definitely the way she portrayed the character in her own manner. I believe it was a cartoon. Don't quote me on it. When the family originally originated, but she definitely put her stamp on this character itself. Christina Ricci has done a variety of different films, but I'd say this is one of her really good ones. And we start going into Inspector Clouseau. I think it's like that. Different people have done this role. The Pink Panther, and anybody that have seen these, you let me know. Would do you agree with this being an iconic film character? From what I get, I saw the think when it came out early 2000s, the Steve Martin one, silly, not really. I would assume that Alan Arkin and Peter Sellers did more of a authentic type character. Inigo, I'm Latino, Hispanic, and I can't even say it. Inigo Montoya, you killed my father. Prepare to die. It's not the whole phrasing, but The Princess Bride is one of those. I would say I've heard the term cult classic films, and he's definitely one of those characters that belongs on this list. 2001: A Space Odyssey. Now we start to go into. We went from a robot to a computer, and from what I've heard on how in this movie alone, it wasn't, I believe, received very well at first, but it turned out to be something different. And a lot of films since then have gained or taken the inspiration for something like this, the way this movie's done. And don't worry, this is on my to watch list. Groot. Now we go into the superheroes. And yes, to those who are my comic book fans and to those who are not, you'll probably disagree that there's a bunch of others, or you don't feel like the characters themselves um deserve to be on an iconic list, and which is fine. Like I said, uh, tell me in the comments below, who do you feel deserves to be in a list of your own? I'm just reading off a list here, and maybe I'll kind of form. I'm gonna put myself on the spot and perform a top 10 list of iconic film characters. And in this with Groot, if you all have seen the films, he portrays himself as a character that speaks only three words: I am Groot. And he has some defining moments that help him be a part of this team of misfits. And currently, at the time of this release, the third Guardians film is out. And from what I've been told or seen on the interwebs, the director James Gunn said that this is his last time directing this. So that might be the end of a trilogy. There might be more films. I haven't seen the movie yet. I will see it really soon. Just check on the channel and you'll get my quick reaction and review of the film. So I don't want to spoil anything, like I said, for the movies I've seen. And this one, you see the first film, you know the ending of it and what happens to Groot. And I would say that is his defining moment. But uh, this could be I would assume other superheroes are gonna be on this list. So it's gonna see how we go. So let's continue because we got more to go. Wallace and Gromit. This is I'm gonna say it properly. Stop animation. These films, I've seen some of these films, and at first I believe it was a television, and then they made it into a movie. And this is a character that doesn't speak at all because obviously animals don't speak, not unless if you kind of train them to. And I could see this as becoming a iconic character, and it's one of those that he his actions show who the type of character he is, and it leads to getting out of certain predicaments and things like that. So I would accept this. Ethan Hunt, Tom Cruise. This current year in 2023, he is working on, I believe, the eighth Mission Impossible film at the age of 60, I believe. And I need to work on my cardio because I need to run like Tom Cruise. Let's see how old is Tom Cruise. And I've looked this up. Yep, he's 60. I need to run like Tom Cruise because when you see him in these movies, the beginning movies were a start off point, and then I think once they started, they just kept going and bringing up the stunts, and the man does literally his own stunts. It is just bananas. I'm gonna have to create a video and show you a reaction video, or I'll see if I can find it. There is a video of all the crazy stunts Tom Cruise has done, and some of it is like praise to him, but it's just one of those that's insane. And I would definitely say that his character has evolved from the first film to the very next one. And if you haven't seen it, some of the original characters from the very first film appear to be showing up in the next one. And it's become like an Americanized version of James Bond, which I would assume James Bond is going to be here in this list. So I could see Ethan Hunt. Red, Shawshank Redemption. I had heard of the movie originally. I've seen the movie, but I had heard of the movie originally, and I've heard that when it came out, it got like critically destroyed. And to some of you, you don't really follow the critics. That's fine. I follow them for reference and suggestions, and I kind of put my own viewpoint on things like this. So the story itself is very interesting, and Morgan Freeman, a very talented actor, and the way he tells this story as a narrator, it's done really well. So I would definitely say it is an iconic character. Yes. Walker Point Blank. And I'm not obviously going to go into detail on all of them. I haven't seen it, but if any of you have seen it, in a film in 1967, defining moment, the click of his relentless heels. No, Corporal Hicks, the Alien franchise, directed by James Cameron. Those movies are iconic, and I would assume by any means that the main character is definitely going to be on this list. So I'm going to kind of skip a little bit ahead and just kind of read them off to you. Bane from Batman and Robin and The Dark Knight Rises. I would say that even though, yes, actors portray a similar character like the Batman actors, the Superman, Spider Man, Hulk, the list goes on and on. But for me, in 1997, yes, I was a kid in those times, and that Batman and Robin was cheesy and silly. So Bane really wasn't that menacing type of character as to my comic book aficionados. I would assume the Dark Knight Rises version got it a little bit better, but some people still didn't like.
Some people still didn't like the way I talked in this movie. I sounded like Sean Connery.
So, but I would definitely say it was more of a menacing look, and what he does to Batman is more of a way of portraying a particular image in a comic of what he does. Then you can look it up, and there's a fight scene between them, and obviously when the bad guy meets the bad guy wins at the start. Maybe the bad guy gets it later. I won't spoil it for you if you haven't seen it, but I would say Bane has become an iconic character, and with DC with DC rebooting their franchise again, we may see Bane again because they're bringing in a new Batman, or the one with Christopher Pattinson. Wait, did I say that right? Uh, Robert Pattinson, Christopher Pattinson. It's because I was thinking of Christopher Nolan. Robert Pattinson. Sorry, excuse me. But yeah, let's. Woody. Now we start going into the animated. I would kind of bring Woody a little bit to the like higher in the list, not at the bottom. But I would say his arc definitely changed in the time span of the four films. Obviously, to those who may agree with me in this statement, I felt it ended perfectly with a third film, but adding the fourth film and what they did to Woody's character, it ends up being something that okay, he changed as a toy. Yes, it's a toy, and that makes him very interesting to have become a character that goes through a bond with a boy for all his life and then changing and saying goodbye to that relationship and saying goodbye to a relationship with his other friends. But I'll leave it at that. Check out the movies if you haven't seen them. Not familiar with this one. If you all are familiar with it, comment below. 1987 with Nail and I know the actor Richard E. Grant. V. Here we go. Another comic. V for Vendetta. This is one of those. If you see the mask right now, is definitely become a iconic Halloween mask, or not iconic, but I definitely see that mask during Halloween, and the way the story is done and the portrayal. Um, Even though it looks like it was just a one-off, the significance and the importance for it, I definitely could see it being a good movie character. Even though this episode is iconic, this is the greatest movie characters, so I could definitely see him on this list. Roy Beatty, Blade Runner. Don't spoil it for me, but I have not seen the Blade Runner film, even though I know there's like 4 or 5 versions, a director's cut, edited cut, just things like this. And I know I've heard things. I've heard things that this character is very important in the film. So I respect this person that created this list and the significance that he has. So I'm gonna go a little bit deeper into maybe like the top 30. Robert Blank, Gross Point Blank, Samwise Gamgee, the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Definitely had a character arc and leading to helping his good friend in a small little village where they were from. So, yes, another character from the Alien franchise, and the late great Bill Paxton, Private William Hudson. Elizabeth Slaughter, the girl with the dragon tattoo trilogy, and the girl with the dragon tattoo, and the girl with, there was a remake. Okay, that's what it is. A trilogy and a remake. So we're going to keep going. And this one, Frank Durbin, the Naked Gun series, the late Leslie Nielsen. I've seen some of these filmed in parts and seen some of them as well. They're silly, they're cheesy, and I think it becomes great and iconic in the sense of the way he tries to portray himself as a serious character, but it is still just absolutely funny and hilarious. So, Donnie Darko, I know several people that bring up this film and someone playing with Jake Gyllenhaal. Captain Kirk from the Star Trek series, and it's been done by William Shatner and Chris Pine. And I know there's Star Trek fans out there who may not be fans of the recent remake that came out with Chris Pine, but I would assume that everyone loved the ones like with William Shatner, the television series, or I may be wrong. I might be wrong. Let me know in the comments here. Let's keep going here on the list. Star Lord. Haven't seen the third Guardians film, but throughout his time in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, he's had a character arc. And I would assume the ending of his third film, possibly, I don't know, that he's going to become a great movie character. So have to wait and see on that. Tony Montana. What's coming to you, my friend? That's my impersonation. But this was a this is a film and a character that you'll see that is become great and iconic because I've seen t-shirts, towels, hats, bumper stickers. I've seen it all. I've seen it referenced in other movies, TV shows, and it definitely becomes one of those that is this character itself alone is such a popular character, and in the time that it came out of a kingpin in Miami, and it's one of, I would definitely just say, iconic all in itself, especially played by a character like Al Pacino, which I'm going to assume most of his characters are going to pop up here in this list. Marge Gunderson, Fargo, to anyone who has seen Fargo. Neo, Keanu Reeves. Nothing against the sequel and the third one, but to me, I would say the standout for him is the first one. And I'm going to have to create an episode of just three films because some films tend to go past three, but just three films alone that end up becoming a great thing here. And our next one is Mr. Harry Potter. Now we're starting to get into the nitty gritty, the specifics. There's probably a list of other characters. Um, and he definitely had an arc, as you see there in the listing. Sorry, allergies. From 2001 to 2011. And he was able to expand, Daniel Radcliffe was able to expand his character in that time period. And I could definitely see it becoming great and iconic for just Hollywood in general and pop culture phenomenon with the books and just everything. It's in theme parks. It's everywhere you go. It is definitely a character. As I referenced, Gollum Smeagol from the Lord of the Rings trilogy and the Hobbit films. It is definitely a character that goes through an arc and you kind of feel for him and you kind of sympathize him to a certain extent. And this is another one of done by motion capture where a person wore a suit with dots in their body, done by the great Andy Serkis, who I would assume his other character, Caesar the ape from the Apes films, is definitely should be higher than this, or vice versa. So we'll have to see here. Hans Landon, here we go. I know a friend of mine was Mr. Quentin Tarantino characters, Glorious, excuse the French, and Glorious Bastards. Excuse the language, but this film is, I would definitely say, one of my favorites of Mr. Tarantino's, and it was done very well of Christoph Waltz. If you've seen this film, and if you haven't, the beginning with this guy here, now that I've kind of revisited it, it's a very well done made film, and it definitely put this character on a list like this of great and iconic. George Bailey, played by James Stewart. It's a Wonderful Life. It's one of these holiday films that does come out, and I would assume that it ends up becoming the sense of it's I don't even think it is a holiday film. I haven't watched it, but it's one of those that it's a how can I say, it becomes a cult classic, I believe, but I'm going to keep going. Wolverine. Some of my comic book fans or film fans in general may believe that Hugh Jackman has this character, the X-Men. It's counting it as the X-Men series, but I would say his character Logan, because he doesn't reference himself as Wolverine, should be at the higher on the list. But Hugh Jackman did this character for 20 years, and it ends up becoming just such an importance and significance that he's returning in the Marvel Cinematic Universe with Ryan Reynolds in Deadpool 3. So let's see how that goes. But this was definitely one of my first, even though the animated cartoon stuff was my introduction to superheroes, this is first live action version, which I would commend is my favorites for Wolverine. E.T., it's one of those that a character that just wants to get his way home, and it is done masterfully. I can't speak today. Masterfully by Steven Spielberg, of two friends bonding together and setting out on an adventure. And that's what a lot of Steven Spielberg's films are. Um, the sense of wonder in kids' eyes or kids' hearts themselves, and just making sure that I would say E.T. is a very classic film of the 80s. Bilbo Baggins. I I enjoy more the Lord of the Rings franchises, but the Hobbit trilogy, like I said, it was in one book. This character, you need to obviously I've read the books, but the way they do it in the movies, especially for the Hobbit trilogy, he kind of has a changing of his story arc, but still I'm gonna spoil just this because it's in a book. He still has a tiny little thing that he can place on his finger, a ring to rule them all. But I would switch him. I would put him at the bottom of the list because I feel there's other characters that are iconic and greater than this one. Another Quentin Tarantino film, Dr. King Schultz, Django Unchained. Another really good Quentin Tarantino film. And Christoph Waltz is just a fantastic actor. And when he works with Quentin Tarantino, he gives it 110%. So that's another one. And here we go, Jim Carrey. He's done a interesting movie career. Interesting to say of you could say there's probably other films that are greater than this one, but Ace Ventura, the two sequels he's done, is iconic and great in the same time of the comedy pinnacle or aspect for someone like Jim Carrey. And here we go. Sarah Connor. People only acknowledge the first two Terminator movies, but they introduced a female lead in Linda Hamilton. And nothing against Amelia Clark, but Linda Hamilton, and we'll probably get into other female characters here that became great movie characters, just showing the female badass. Women can do it too. Taking down Arnold Schwarzenegger in the first one, and then thinking he had to do it again, but her son became friends with him and friends with the enemy. Katniss Everdeen. Like I said, I'm not going to bash on the characters. And to some that have seen the films, I've seen the films, but from what I was told, obviously people didn't like the way they ended the series in the movies. Obviously, books do the more justice. So, give me all your thoughts. I don't want to speak on something like this. Like I said, I've seen it just as a casual moviegoer, and you agree with this position for Katniss Everdeen. Jack Burton, Big Trouble in Little China. Axel Foley, a definitely one of Eddie Murphy's iconic roles. The trilogy within itself, the first two are good. The third one is it's there. It's okay, but he definitely goes from his funny, humorous self to basically having to show that he takes his job seriously, and it's one of those that it's a very I would definitely say it belongs on the list. Emile Polon, Emile, 2001. Anyone has seen it? Do you agree? Disagree? Vito Corleone, The Godfather. The Godfather Part One and Two. This is what I've heard on the interwebs. This is another trilogy of films where people enjoyed the first one and the second one of Godfather, and they hated the third one, or they enjoy them all. And this is a character that has multiple famous movie lines, catchphrases that have become synonymous and kind of parodied in other films themselves. So I would definitely say that it is a iconic and great movie character. Sean Riley, Shaun of the Dead. To any of my zombie fans out there or end of the world apocalyptic fans, if you have not seen this movie, give it a chance. It is silly, but it is entertaining because it does the tropes, I believe, of just movies, zombie movies themselves. And it's Simon Pegg, Edgar Wright, and Simon Pegg is just hysterical. So this is definitely a great movie character. Obi-Wan Kenobi, the Star Wars series. The originals that came out in the 70s when Alec Guinness was first introduced was perfect. And then when the prequels came out, not everybody was a fan of them, but Ewan McGregor tried to do his best interpretation of the late Alec Guinness, and he did it to the best that he could. And I would say it's definitely iconic and a great movie character. Luke Skywalker. Excuse me. This one definitely from the originals. You're going to call him from episode 4, 5, and 6. Luke Skywalker definitely has an arc and goes through a change from that skinny little farm boy on that desert planet. And like I said, I would rank it a little bit higher, but let's see as we keep going here. Henry Callahan, the Dirty Harry series. Clint Eastwood probably has a encyclopedia of movies, and I would say because he's made famous lines from this role that this should be a little bit higher, but to some of you that have seen more of Clint Eastwood's films, you may disagree with me, and other ones are belong on the list above this one. Lester Burnham, American Beauty by Kevin Spacey. There we go. Mr. Harrison Ford, Blade Runner. I would assume that this was they don't it came out in the 80s, so it was first Han Solo, Indiana Jones, then this one. I'm going to have to watch all 5 versions of this. I'm going to just to kind of go through. I'm going to just name the character, the movie, their appearance, and the actor. And I'm going to go a little more in depth. The top 15, top 10. Chris Evans, Captain America. I am a fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That's all I'll say. Tommy DeVito from Goodfellas, played by Mr. Joe Pesci. Joe Pesci, very good actor, and a part of Martin Scorsese's film encyclopedia as well. Anton Chigurh, No Country for Old Men, fantastic film. I would say not just a great movie character, but a iconic movie or a great movie villain. Amy Dune, Gone Girl, definitely a character. No spoilers here. You didn't expect of what happens and things like that. That's all I'll say. This movie has me conflicted because you like them at first, but then you love to hate this character, Lou Bloom Nightcrawler. That's all I'll say. You just kind of like him originally, and then you just hate the kind of person that Jake Gyllenhaal plays in this character, Nightcrawler. And I know good friend is gonna on this one the usual suspects: Kaiser Sose, Ferris Bueller. I'd say he belongs a little bit higher. Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Matthew Broderick, the driver from Drive, played by Ryan Gosling, Yoda, voiced by and performed by Mr. Frank Oz, Walter Sobchak, The Big Lebowski, done by Mr. John Goodman, Rocky Balboa. I gotta put him higher above this, done by Sylvester Stallone. Story of an underdog, and basically portrayed to be somebody that came from the bottom and has definitely changed throughout the series of films and even into the spin-off films of the Creed franchise. Augustus Finch, done by Gregory Peck, To Kill a Mockingbird. Captain Mal Reynolds, Serenity. The Man with No Name, here we go. Clint Eastwood himself, The Bad and the Ugly, A Fistful of Dollars, A Few Dollars More. Oh, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I'm sorry, forgive me. Here we go. Another Quentin Tarantino character, Jules Winfield, Pulp Fiction, and Mr. Samuel L. Jackson has had many iconic lines in this one. If you know him, you know him. Peter Venkman, Ghostbusters, Mr. Bill Murray from the two sequels, and another Lord of the Rings character, Gandalf, the Hobbit, and the Lord of the Rings franchise. Snake Plissken, Escape from New York, Escape from LA. The Terminator T-800, the Terminator series, Mr. Arnold Schwarzenegger. Forrest Gump, done by Tom Hanks. Patrick Bateman, American Psycho, Christian Bale. Ash, the Evil Dead trilogy. Daniel Plainview, There Will Be Blood. Daniel Day-Lewis, The Bride. Quentin Tarantino character, the Kill Bill series by Uma Thurman. Travis Bickle, Taxi Driver. Hannibal Lecter, the Hannibal Lecter films. And famously, as you see there in the list, but famously done by the man in the picture right there, Anthony Hopkins, Doc Brown, Christopher Lloyd, Loki, Tom Hiddleston, Rick Blaine, Casablanca, and Gustav, Ralph Fiennes, The Grand Budapest Hotel. I was told by my friend, who I've mentioned here in this podcast, saying that this is a very entertaining film, and Ralph Fiennes does a phenomenal performance. So I think this is a must see for me. And if you all seen this, let me know. Ron Burgundy, we go into more of the comedic. I nothing against the second one. It wasn't up to par, but the first one is hysterical. I'm a fan of Will Ferrell's films. Aragon, another Lord of the Rings character, and definitely had a character arc drastically changed from the part 1, 2, and 3. Captain Jack Sparrow, the Pirates of the Caribbean series, Johnny Depp, and Iron Man, Tony Stark, Robert Downey Jr., Marty McFly, Michael J. Fox, Michael Corleone, The Godfather, done by Mr. Al Pacino. And we're here at the 10. This one is the dude, the Big Lebowski, Jeff Bridges, Darth Vader, performed by James Earl Jones, but David Prowse was a stand-in. Tyler Durden, Brad Pitt, John McClane, Bruce Willis, the Joker. It was done by several people, but I would say it is famously known for Heath Ledger, and they've all done it iconically, so the character itself is great. And here we go. Top 5. Elin Ripley, famously done by Sigourney Weaver, who she became herself as a female lead kicking ass and taking names in the Aliens franchise. And Batman, Han Solo, James Bond, and number 1, Indiana Jones. So I'm going to remove this here. And as I'm talking to you, this episode went a little bit long today, just to go over a list and bringing up a list of characters to where I probably missed characters or reference stuff. But I would definitely say great movie characters. I'm going to give you 5. No particular order. Indiana Jones, James Bond, Tony Stark, Iron Man, Sigourney Weaver's character in the Alien franchise. I drew a blank. And Caesar from the Planet of the Apes. Overall, all these characters, like I said, they leave a lasting impression on us. We quote them. We say that, oh, this character can win in a fight, or that character was way better. Those movies were terrible. You can have so many things and it being to where it becomes a discussion and you're going to have your list. And it's going to just be for you to decide. Like I said, we're in the year 2023. There's plenty movies to come for the future. And you can look back on all these movie characters. And like I said, it was nothing against what the list I referenced. But as you see, there's 100 characters that go back from the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, and today. So I would say, yeah, what movie character left? I'm going to leave a few questions to you all. What movie character left a lasting impression on you? The significance. Is this movie character film franchise that you continue to watch 100 times? You only watch once and that's it? It should be watched once. Does it feel like it ends up becoming something to you that you want to show to your friends, to your kids when they're at a certain age because you saw some movie characters are on the violent side? Or one of those that, like I said on my very first episode, movies leave an impact on us in a certain way. And it's not just the movies themselves, it's also the movie characters. And from that list that I referenced here, a list of movies that you all have seen that weren't mentioned here today, you all decide. What do you all think? That was it for this episode. I will not try to go long. Sorry for that. Um, I figured it would be take a little bit longer, but pretty much it was just discussing of this could be a 5-hour show, a just a whole day show. I could just keep going and talking about stuff I love and the significance of it. So you all let me know in the comments below. What are your thoughts on your favorite? What are the greatest or iconic movie characters to you? Please make sure to like, comment below. Thank you all so much for watching. This has been the AMS Podcast discussing things film, past, present, and future. I will see you all next time. Bye bye, guys.